Huskers trail by 4. Sam Hybe, deep right side. Hannah Whitey's at the buzzer. Yeah! Betcha! Hannah Whitey's throws in a 3 at the buzzer, and it's a 1-point game as we go to the fourth.
Our weekly look inside Husker women's basketball.
Hybe out top, working at the right elbow, steps back for 3. Yeah! Betcha! Sam Hybe hits her third 3.
With the head coach, Amy Williams.
Leah Brown out top with 4, with 3. Kicks deep left corner. O'Leary for 3, deep left corner. Yeah! Betcha! Shot of the game! Dagger 3 for Nysia O'Leary. And a timeout taken by Michigan. Nysia O'Leary stuck that 3 late shot clock.
Now here's your host, Matt Coatney.
You know, I've been walking around town all day today. I spent about 3 hours at a local coffee shop getting ready for Purdue, and I've had more people come up to me and say they listened to yesterday's game. And I was just listening to that montage, that Nysia O'Leary 3 in the corner is the definition of a dagger 3, if you think about it. Hey, good evening, everybody. Matt Coatney with you. This is the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour. Amy Williams is here. We'll take your calls for the entire hour. 866-HUSKER-1. We'll talk about that great win over Michigan yesterday. Preview this week, which includes a home game against Purdue on Wednesday night and a road game at Wisconsin. We'll have Purdue radio icon Tim Newton here in segment 2 to preview the Purdue Boilermakers. But that game yesterday, Amy, woo! Okay, health insurance rates will go down throughout the state because anybody who survived that game, watching it or listening to it, and there were a lot of people, as I said, I've talked to a lot of people today who either listened or watched that game, they could skip their yearly physical because their heart is in great shape if they survive that one. Mm-hmm. After you've won a game like that, do you consider coaching a tight come-from-behind win as fun to coach because you won?
It's much more fun than the alternative,
yeah,
which is to kind of let games slip away, like what happened at Michigan State this year. Like that was less fun than coming from behind to take a win. But I'd prefer just to lead from tip to the final buzzer, Matt.
Well, didn't happen that way. I said on the pregame show yesterday that it was important for Nebraska to get out to a good start. And you did against Michigan. You had a 4-point lead in the first quarter, but then the Wolverines rallied, got out to a 9-point lead at 28-19, and at the half you were trailing Michigan by 6. They changed to a zone defense in the second quarter. I thought that kind of disrupted your offense a bit. Is that what you thought?
I thought so too, Matt. I thought when they first shifted to the zone, we did a little too much kind of standing around. We'd have a little initial action. If we didn't get anything off of, 1 or 2 passes, then there was a lot of stagnant, just stand around. And we talked about that a lot at halftime, is just increasing our activity and understanding we got to continue to make them move, get ball movement. And I thought when we did that in the second half, we went on to have a much better scoring second half.
I don't know where these statistics come from because they're the same official stats I look at preparing for every game. But what I looked at prior to the game said Michigan was dead last in the conference, the number of three-point field goal makes, and 13th in the league in three-point field goal percentage. And then here they come out and they hit 8 out of 14 triples against you. It surprised me, and, I mean, they run Maddie Nolan into the game for just a few final seconds of the first quarter. She stands in the corner. I didn't look at your scouting report. If I'm doing the scouting report, I'm like, don't guard her. She hasn't hit a 3 all year. She throws in a 3 to take a 3-point lead at the end of the first quarter. I don't even know if she was on your scouting report. Mm-hmm. Did their 3-point shooting surprise you yesterday?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think we looked at the same numbers that you did, Matt, but Maddie Nolan is a player that we ran across in the recruiting trails, so we knew that although she's 0 for 5 from the three-point line on the year, that she's a very capable three-point shooter because we'd seen her do it plenty of times just with her AAU team and AAU program. So something that, we were well aware of. But, in that situation, we were being aggressive to end the quarter. We were in a trap situation. We rotated over to Naz Hillman, and she found herself open in that corner, and she drained that 3. I think that when Robbins, who's just a fantastic senior player for them, went down in the first quarter. It forced them to shift their lineup a little bit, and they brought in some players that are very capable three-point shooters kind of in her place. And so something that I feel like, probably aided in their ability to be more deadly from behind the arc.
This is the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour. 866-HUSKER-1, 866-487-5371. And the Sports Nightly Hotline is brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Let's go to the phones. Let's go up to Omaha and talk to Denny. Denny, you're on with Coach Williams.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to make a comment. The only basketball, the women that I do watch is Nebraska. I watch every game, listen to every game, and I have for years. And I was just so surprised about how physical the game is. I've seen people knocking people around, and it just kind of surprises me, and it kind of takes away from the game as far as I'm concerned. And then I got another little comment. I know you can't comment on this, but the refereeing that I see in the women's game is absolutely atrocious. And that's all I got to say, and thank you very much.
Well, first of all, Denny, thank you so much for tuning in to Husker Women's Basketball. We appreciate that support and you tuning in. And we have the best radio broadcast duo in the country, so it's really fun to be able to kind of tune in on the radio, and I appreciate you doing so. And I thought yesterday's game was very physical basketball game, just kind of both ways, and two teams just really kind of grinding it out. And there were some battle scars after that one was over, and but something that I'm proud of our kids to be able to kind of just get tough and find a way to come out ahead.
There's a picture on social media floating around of Leah Brown. Somebody took this from behind the bench. And her left shoulder looks like either she started the semester with a dance class and her partner's Edward Scissorhands, or she lotioned herself with barbed wire before the game on her shoulder. Two huge red scrape marks. And I look at that and I think, in a picture, if someone said, what's a Big Ten women's basketball conference game like? There it is. Leah Brown looked like she had been through it yesterday. But it kind of talks about how tough your team was, don't you think?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I thought, Leah in particular yesterday, I was really, really proud of her. And, she got some good open looks against that zone. And when she went in, she's just so aggressive-minded offensively, which is what our team needs her to be. And but she missed a couple of open looks from the perimeter and wasn't really kind of shooting it as well as she sometimes is or is capable of. And so in that sense, or in that instance, I thought she did a great job of just, really attacking the basket and going into what she knew was going to be more contact situation, more physical situation, and taking that contact and getting herself to the free throw line 10 times. And that was really important in our ability to secure a win.
Huskers won at 74-71. Yesterday evening at PBA, 14-4 the record, 4-3 in the Big Ten, with a game at Wisconsin on Sunday at 11 a.m. Central. So, kind of getting back to the game, you were behind at the half, 34-28. You went the final 5 minutes of the first half without scoring. So I thought it was imperative you start the third quarter well, and then that didn't happen. And so they get out to a 41-28 lead. And you've 7 minutes now combined, you haven't scored. And then you took a timeout. And I'm not saying you're the only coach that would have taken a timeout there, but to say that was an effective timeout, I think, would be an understatement, because it kind of turned the whole game around. What did you guys talk about during that timeout?
Well, what we talked about is I just felt like, everybody was trying so hard to do something to really help our team kind of get over the hump, and it wasn't really working. And then we were so concerned about what we were not able to do, and kind of it was bringing the energy way down. So we just spent some time in that timeout huddle talking about the energy and needing to shift that. And one good way to do that was to just focus on finding ways to lift up one of your teammates wherever they needed help and where they needed to be lifted up, and to pour yourself into being an energy giver for your team or one of your teammates right now. And I thought that when we did that, we started to kind of chip away and really had some good plays, and the energy started to pick up from there forward, and our belief that we could come back and win that ball game did as well.
That's Amy Williams. I'm Matt Coatney. This is the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour. 866-HUSKER-1 is the number if you'd like to join us on the Woodhouse Auto Family Hotline. And the Sports Nightly Hotline is brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go out to Hall County, Nebraska, to Mike. Mike, you're on with Coach Williams.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. You know, I love how, and you just kind of really talked about it, how this team really just plays together. You can tell they got a real passion for each other. And I'm just kind of curious, is that something that, I mean, obviously you want to teach it, but do you think it's more coaching, or is it just the players really believing in each other? I mean, how do you get that established? And I'll hang up and listen to your comment.
Well, thanks, Mike, for the call. And, you know, I'm going to credit the players for that culture and that chemistry. And it's something that obviously as a coaching staff we want to encourage, and something that we want to recruit is players who have that kind of team mentality and that are excited about, you know, I mean, the players that we're bringing here are really concerned about what can I do to help us win championships and help our team win. And I think that kind of team concept, that togetherness, you know, it's something today we spent quite a bit of time in film session celebrating big plays and big shots, but probably as much time celebrating the bench celebrations and the excitement that was coming from, you know, the players on our bench that just really tends to fuel that team spirit. And I think there's just a combination of a lot of people. I credit my coaching staff. They have a real team mentality. They're always modeling, you know, what needs to be done. How can I help? How can I pick up? And the staff really complements each other, and I think that sometimes trickles down into the team as well. But it's something that I give the players immense credit for, just their passion for each other, their excitement for seeing each other do well, and that's such a key to success.
Well, we talked about in terms of team camaraderie that you're going to have a team effort to replace the three-point shooting of Taylor Kissinger, who's out for the year. And you got it yesterday in going 12 for 24 from beyond the arc. 6 threes from Hannah Whitish. That tied a career high. 6 threes from Sam Hybe, tied her career high. But then Nysia Eilili hit 3 triples. And her final one in the deep left corner, and we heard the highlight right before we started the show, I think really clinched the game. Was that 3 for Nysia, that what we were calling a dagger 3 before we came on the air? Was that just out of the offense, or was that a special you called from the bench, or how did that come to be?
It really just was out of the offense. I thought it's right before the shot clock buzzer, so we were being very patient at that point in the game. We had a nice lead, but not kind of nothing was really decided yet, and so we were working the flow of the offense and I thought that the patience ended up leading to her finding herself wide open in the corner. There were several times today when we played the film back for our players where, we could point to, look how concerned they are about Kate Kane inside, and that opened up some open looks. And when we can knock down open looks from behind the arc, it will make things easier for Kate Kane and the rest of our team inside as well. And just the way that team kind of works together. But I think that was a true possession where we worked the offense, we trusted it, we had other weapons on the court that they had to worry about, and it found Nysia wide open in that corner, and she drained it.
Huskers won it 74-71, and they improved now to 14-4 overall, 4-3 in the Big Ten. They've got Purdue coming up on Wednesday night. When we return, we'll talk with the voice of the Boilermakers, Tim Newton, one of my favorite people in the conference, and we'll take your calls at 866-HUSKER-1 when the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour returns in a few moments. Welcome back to the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour. 866-HUSKER-1 is the number if you'd like to join us, and I am very, very happy now to bring on to the show as a guest probably somebody who has watched more games of our next opponent than anyone in history. Tim Newton became the radio voice of Purdue women's basketball in 1990, meaning he's been on the call for about 30 years. He's also the voice of Purdue football and is the director of external relations and communications for the Krannert School of Management. He also is probably the only person in the country who has appeared on 2 coaches' shows tonight, as he just got finished hosting the Sharon Versup show in West Lafayette. Tim, how are you tonight?
Matt, I'm fine, and that was a very polite way of saying that I'm old, so thank you very much.
Well, I'm standing in line. We've never had you on the Amy Williams show. Have you ever talked to Amy Williams before, Tim?
I have never talked to her before, but I wanted to congratulate her on a great season so far.
Well, thank you for that, Tim. I appreciate that.
Well, you know, we can always try and give our fans a good overview of our next opponent, but nothing better than talking to somebody who's part of the program, and no one better than you. And a tough loss yesterday at home at Mackey Arena to Minnesota. I want to prove to you, I was listening to your show. Did I hear this correctly, that the Boilers have won 7 in a row at Williams Arena, and Minnesota has won 4 of 5 at Mackey Arena? Is that right?
That is correct. It really is amazing. And yesterday's game was very strange. Minnesota jumped out to a 16-4 lead. Purdue responded with a 14-0 run. And then the game was tied at 43 with about 4 minutes to play in the third quarter, and Minnesota went on another 19-0 run. And so they said basketball is a game of runs, and yesterday it certainly was to the extreme.
Tim Newton, radio voice of Purdue women's basketball, with us on the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour. Jeff Grease and I were watching your game on my computer on Press Row right up to the time that I had to go interview Amy Williams before the game. It looked like turnovers really did end Purdue yesterday. Was that the main story?
Yeah, and turnovers have been a problem most of the season, but yesterday they were particularly rough in the third quarter, which is when Minnesota started its run. But they scored 9 of their 19 points directly off turnovers. And as Amy, I'm sure, can attest, there are 2 kinds of turnovers. One is where you throw the ball into the first row, which you don't like, but at least you can set up defensively. But when you make a turnover at midcourt and it winds up in your basket 3 seconds later, that's a problem. And there were a lot of those during that run yesterday.
Visiting with Tim Newton here on the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour, he said to Sharon Versup on her show an hour ago that there are players that it seems like they've played for 7 years, and he mentioned Hannah Whitish. Well, I think you're ready for Ariana Harris and Dominique Oden to graduate. Is that a fair statement, Amy?
That would be a very fair statement. Yes, absolutely. It seems like Ariana Harris, I have nightmares of her blocking shots ever since I've been coaching here. I'm telling you, what tremendous class that senior class is for Purdue.
And then yesterday, Tim, Harris set the Purdue career rebounding record, nearing 1,000 career rebounds. How much fun has it been for you getting to describe her games through the years?
Well, you know, her nickname coming into Purdue, they called her the block party in high school because she had so many block shots and was a great rebounder in high school. And so the fact that she's had success there has not been a surprise. What really has been more surprising for me is her offense has really picked up since her freshman year. She's going to leave here as one of the top 20 scorers in program history, and I think it's a pretty storied history. She has improved around the basket. You know, she's undersized for a classic post player at 6'1", but she plays a lot bigger than that. And yeah, she's done a great job on both ends of the floor, and we're hoping that she can finish her senior year on a real up note.
Amy, Purdue always known for their defense, but specifically as a coach, what makes them particularly tough to prepare for from the defensive side of the ball?
Well, I think that they're very effective about being able to change their defense, but they can be so aggressive and play out and take things away from you because they know that they have that presence inside that's just kind of an eraser, and it just causes people to really be a little nervous about going inside or attacking inside or off the dribble, and I think that that shot blocking presence in there is allows their entire team to play more aggressively and to be able to do some things to really mix their defenses, and it's just it's tough to prepare for.
Huskers in Purdue Wednesday night here at PBA 6:45 Central with the pregame here on the Husker Sports Network, visiting with Tim Newton, the radio voice of Purdue. Tim, I think I speak for everyone in the Big Ten when I say how sad we were all to see Tam Farquhar go down to a season-ending injury a few weeks ago in your game against Rutgers. Obviously very hard to replace. Those minutes seem to be eaten up mostly by Janelle Grant, who's a transfer from Pacific. How different, though, is your team without Tam Farquhar?
Well, she's probably Purdue's best on-ball defender, and she's one of the best rebounders along with Harris. And she's a kid that didn't put up staggering numbers, but it seemed like in crunch time she would come up with big plays. I think more than that, just a real steadying influence on the floor. And we've got a pretty unique mix here at Purdue. We've got 4 kids on the team, including Tam, who speak French. She and 2 other teammates are from the Montreal area, and then we've got another teammate on the team from the Senegal, who's also a French speaker. My French is about 45 years old, and so I can get to Como Talibou, and that's about as far as I can get. But, Tam has been a great presence for Purdue, and certainly, as you mentioned, you've got to eat up the minutes somewhere, and Janelle Grant has done that, but it's the production that you worry about, and I think that's still a work in progress here. She's only been out for the last couple of games, and I think it's safe to say that Purdue is still adjusting to that loss on the floor.
Tim Newton is our guest here, previewing Purdue and Nebraska on Wednesday night. Another dynamic player on your team Husker fans are probably familiar with is Dominique Oden, a senior who, from my standpoint personally, Tim, one of my favorite players in the league, especially when you look at her background. Her family had to move because of Hurricane Katrina, now an engineering student. How important is she, not only on the floor, but then as a leader to the Purdue program?
Well, and you mentioned she has an unbelievable backstory. For those not familiar with it, her father was murdered when she was 4 years old. She was just sitting feet away, and her dad was outside their car, and he was murdered in New Orleans. And then 3 years after that, Hurricane Katrina came and basically forced the family out of their home and into Atlanta. And so she basically had to become a second mom to her sisters, and she grew up in a hurry. She's a great student, an engineering student. What I really like about her is we'll see every once in a while she'll get switched on to a post player. And Dominique she's probably 5'8" in thick shoes, but she battles in there, and she's a sneaky rebounder. She's kind of a sneaky defensive player, but she's a great kid, and she's the kind of person that you want representing your program both on and off the floor. She's just a tremendous young woman.
Amy, we've talked about Harris, we've talked about Oden. I want to talk about their point guard, Carissa McLaughlin, who you had talked a little bit earlier about Purdue having 3 1,000-point scorers. McLaughlin hardly ever leaves the floor. What challenges does she cause you in preparing for Purdue?
Well, she causes so many problems because she has such a quick release, and she's such a danger from behind the arc. I mean, she's the type of player that can go for 10 threes in a game, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, she's just that dangerous. But I think the biggest thing with Carissa is that she has really expanded her skill set to now be able to, you can't just run her off the line. You have to give great initial effort and great secondary effort. And she's just very crafty about being able to find openings. And it's not just, oh, okay, great job, you rode her off this flare screen. Well, there's a pin down coming right after it. And her ability to do step backs and to do some things off the dribble, mid-range, she's really expanded her skill set, and it shows a lot about the work ethic that she puts into the gym, and she's just somebody that you cannot lose for 1 second, or she's going to make you pay.
This is the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Show. Tim Newton, the play-by-play voice of Purdue, is our guest tonight, along with Amy Williams. I'm Matt Coatney. And Tim, I'm always interested in how other teams in the league see Nebraska. Amy Williams and I can sit here and talk about Nebraska all day, but from your standpoint, obviously the Big Ten race this year is about as tight as I've ever seen. What are your thoughts on the Huskers as you prepare to come here for the game Wednesday night?
I think the thing that strikes me, and it was the same way watching yesterday in your comeback against Michigan, is how well they played together. I think Amy's done a great job with getting players that have very complementary skills to each other. And, Hannah Whitish certainly makes things happen from the backcourt, but you've got some different pieces and parts that on any given night, and we saw it a couple of years. I think Leah Brown is still raining threes down on us, like from the last time we played up there. I mean, she had an unbelievable game up in Pinnacle Bank Arena. But you've got some players up there that are capable on any given night of scoring, and I think Nebraska's going to play hard. That you've got a team that's long. And it's just really a credit to Amy and how hard she's got them playing. And we know that we're in a battle when we come up to Lincoln here in a couple of nights.
Tim, I get this question asked a lot about who's Nebraska's rival now that they've been in the Big Ten for 9 years. And everybody asks me if Iowa's Nebraska's main rival. And I just kind of chuckle because I personally think rivalries are based on games and not geography, and there's no way anyone can look back at the first 3 games that Nebraska played against Purdue after joining the Big Ten and not think of this as a very respectful but intense rivalry. A 3-overtime win for Nebraska, the first time the team's ever played at Mackey, then a double overtime win for Purdue in the Big Ten tournament championship game, and then an overtime win for Purdue at Devaney in a nationally televised game on CBS. I think of Purdue as Nebraska's rival as much as anybody. But what are your memories of really those first 3 games after Nebraska joined the league?
My memories are that I had to limit my fluid intake because I knew it was going to be a long time that I was going to be sitting there, and I wasn't going to be able to leave my broadcast spot. I think of the shots that you hit at the end of the I think a regulation or the first overtime playing at Mackey Arena to send that game into a triple overtime, and just the tremendous back and forth that we saw there and in the championship game later at the Big Ten tournament. And you're right, very respectful. I mean, there haven't been any, not that you would expect any, but there haven't been any incidents, but 2 teams that just play hard, go after each other, and at the end of the day, you shake hands and get ready for the next one. But really tightly contested, good, high-level basketball, and that's what I think of, especially in those first few games that Purdue and Nebraska played as Big Ten competitors.
Tim, looking at the Big Ten league play so far, what surprises you the most? Northwestern, maybe?
Northwestern, maybe, although, you talk about surprises, and then you look up tonight, and a depleted Michigan State team goes into Rutgers and wins by 11. So I guess what surprises me after 30 years is nothing, because we're used to seeing that. I think certainly Northwestern's been a surprise. I think Iowa, you wondered what life was going to be like after Megan Gustafson, and here they are at 15-3 and 6-1 in the conference. And some teams that maybe are in the bottom half of the Big Ten that you didn't expect to be there. Partly injuries may have had something to do with that. And, in Minnesota, I think they've had some turmoil up there. Although I do think, after talking to the folks up there yesterday, I would expect that to be a better Minnesota team going forward, and they certainly played very, very well yesterday. But, we've seen Northwestern. We were up there a couple of weeks ago, had a chance to win that one late after being way down. But Joe McEwen's got a lot of good pieces, and Lindsey Pulliam's one of the more dynamic players in the conference. So I guess overall what surprises me is nothing, because I think it's as balanced from top to bottom a league, and that you really are at a point where whether it's 1 through 14, if you're not ready to play, you're going to get beat that particular night.
I'll just throw the same question back at you, Amy. Is there anything that surprises you so far as we're just a little past a third of the way through the Big Ten schedule?
Very similarly to Tim, I just feel like the real surprise is just the parity, the actual parity is just, it's pretty surprising when you think about a 14-team league, that to really genuinely feel like that every time when you're looking at matchups to really be kind of uncertain of how this game's going to go or how this one should come out, or feeling like anybody can on any given night be able to step up and knock anybody off. And I think that's kind of what makes this league exciting, but makes it daunting.
Well, it will be a 6:45 p.m. Central pregame for the Huskers in Purdue here on Wednesday night. Tim Newton, the longtime radio voice of Purdue, you're a true gentleman. It was, I want to say, 5 years ago tonight that you brought Jeff Grease and I a cookie celebrating our 500th broadcast together to the Mackey Arena, and you visited me when I filled in on Huskers softball last year at Purdue. There's nobody who was more welcoming to Nebraska in the league than Tim Newton and the Boilermakers, so we hope that you enjoy your time at PBA, but not too much on Wednesday night.
Well, let me turn that around really quickly, because I will say that Nebraska fans as a whole have got to be the most polite people on earth. I had people, when we were up there for football 2 years ago, apologizing to me because it was raining. And I thought, these people are really special up here, and they love their Huskers, which is the way it should be, but a great fan base. And Sharon and I talked tonight. It's really one of the fun places to go in the league because their fans are so loyal and so into the game. And hopefully your kids can draw some energy from that when they come up and play. And that's certainly what we're hoping here on Wednesday.
Tim Newton, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
That's
Thanks,
Tim Newton, and I'm Matt Coatney. We'll have more. Hey, friends, Nebraska 811 says, go dig red. Before you dig, always call or click 811 to have your utility lines marked. It's free. It's easy. It's the law. The Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Show. Amy Williams with me. I'm Matt Coatney. Let's go back to the phones on the Woodhouse Auto Family Hotline. Here's Roger in Olathe, Kansas. Good evening, Roger.
Good evening. Hello, Coach Williams.
Hi, Roger.
I have two questions. Hi, I have two questions tonight. One is, the first one is player confidence and how that relates to recruiting. My dad always told me when it comes to sports, an opponent cannot take your confidence away, but a player can give away their confidence. And the other one is, question is scoring expectations, especially your starting five and then your rotation players. To me, if a player plays at least a half, the expectation for scoring for each player ought to be minimum 10 points. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, thank you for the call, Roger, and the questions. And I would say that, player confidence, it's just a really tricky and very kind of fickle situation. But one thing that we try to talk about and teach to our players, something that my college coaches talked about and taught to me, which is just that that's something that really you should never let anybody take away from you. It doesn't matter who it is, and an opponent, coaches, fan base, anybody, it's if you're putting in the work and you're really, have been in the gym and have really trained your skills and you know that you've been doing the right things and the right way, then I think it's very, very difficult to rattle that confidence. But it is something that can be fickle, and there's a lot of things that go into it, and emotions and experiences. So it's something that we're constantly working on and talking about is remaining confident through highs and lows of a game. And then when it comes to, player production, and, I think every game really warrants different things. And I think, there's going to be certain ball games where teams just, completely will double down in the post, and they're going to try as hard as they can to take away anything in the paint, and they're going to make it difficult even to make passes into the post. And on those days, you might not get as much production, so to really say, okay, if you play this many minutes, you have to produce this many points. I think we would be missing the boat if we didn't really just take into account, certain different defenses, certain zone defenses, certain pressure, situations call for different players to step up. And that's why we really like our team and our rotations, and the fact that we have many different players that can contribute for us on the offensive side of the ball. And on any given night, somebody could step up and go double figures for us, and might not be Ashton Verbeek's night tonight, but she could go 4 for 7 from behind the arc the next game.
Roger, we appreciate the phone call. Dorothy Lynch Homestyle Dressing and Condiment is one-of-a-kind taste that goes with anything. Good for game day or any day. Dorothy Lynch, endless flavor abilities. More with the coach on the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Hour in a few moments.
You're listening to Sports.
Huskers and Wisconsin, Wednesday night here at PBA at 6:45 Central on the Husker Sports Network, 7 o'clock tip. Hope you can come after that. I want to tell you about something I'm very proud of, one of my favorite projects I'm worked on. Our Team, Our Time tells the story of the historic 2009-10 Nebraska women's basketball season. Subscribe to Husker Sports Podcast on any podcast streaming service. to listen to the newest Husker Sports original podcast presented by J Tech Construction. Just about everybody who's listened to it have really enjoyed it. And we put a lot of work into it, and a lot of people at the Husker Sports Network helped us with it. So I hope you can tune in for that. I think maybe I said Wisconsin Wednesday night. It's Purdue. I'm already thinking ahead to Saturday against Wisconsin. I want to kind of update everybody on Taylor Kissinger. We've not had a Nebraska women's basketball radio hour in a couple of weeks. She had season-ending surgery since last we talked. Could you possibly update fans on how that went and what her status is?
Yeah, I think that her doctors and Taylor and our medical staff are just really excited about the prognosis and what they came out of there feeling like they were able to really correct all the things that were causing her some problems. And so she is now on the mend and heading towards, recovery. And so we're excited, every day that goes by, she's just getting a little stronger and healing. And we know now she's working towards getting back out on the court for us and just back to healthy and not feeling that pain. So we're excited about that. We're glad that she could have successful surgery and start working towards getting better.
Well, it is Nebraska and Purdue. Let me get that right. Purdue on Wednesday night, and then the Huskers travel to Wisconsin to play Wisconsin for the second time in a little over 2 weeks on Saturday afternoon. We'll have it all for you here on the Husker Sports Network, 11 a.m. Central on Saturday. You got the late game on the East Coast last week and the early game in Madison on Saturday. Best of luck to you. It's been a fun hour here, and good luck on Wednesday night.
Thanks so much, Matt.
All right, that'll wrap up the Nebraska Women's Basketball Radio Show. Hour 3 of Sports Nightly comes your way after the break.